Hello folks and welcome back. It's just before Christmas and it's a bit of a damp day, so we're having a talking video today. So it's just over a year now since I discovered I had a coronary artery score of 660 and had to have a stent fitted. And then this year has not been easy, to be fair, in that I then developed microvascular angina and could end up with a lot of breathlessness and then a huge amount of pain from things like just walking up a flight of stairs. So that brings us round to the question, did keto give me heart disease? So first, the disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. What on earth do I know? I'm not a doctor or a dietitian. These are just my personal experiences, which I guess might be interesting to someone else who's in the same position, or maybe you're just interested because you've been following the channel. So that's that. So the introduction, I guess the intro is, so you find out this is where you are, and then you Google what the recommended diet is according to the British health people, and you've got people who are quietly whispering either behind your back or saying to your face, well, this is your own fault for being on that stupid keto diet. What do you expect? That's why you've got heart disease. Are they right? I guess it all boils down to, if I had a time machine and go back and talk to younger me, what would I tell them? Would I tell them to do anything differently? So we'll get to that. But first off, I guess we should break it down, shouldn't we? So what causes heart disease? So there's a number of factors that cause heart disease. There's high blood pressure. There's stress, inflammation caused by smoking, drinking, and sugar in your diet. And that really the primary mechanism is to do with your LDL cholesterol. So your body produces this cholesterol in the liver, then sends it all around the body to be distributed to where it's needed. Fat is essential. It's needed. Your body needs it. So it goes around your body, is delivered, then is taken back to the liver where it's removed. So this cholesterol it's in a ball. Think of it in a ball, in a protein with a receptor on the surface. So it gets back to the liver. The liver spots the receptor, latches on, takes it out, which is why if you're getting older and you're getting these sort of raised cholesterol issues, they give you a statin. What the statin does is it increases the number of those receptors on your liver, so it's more effective at pulling them out. However, what happens is that the LDL cholesterol gets damaged, and that receptor gets knocked off. It's caused by inflammation. And then this cholesterol's going round and round your body, and your body then has to get rid of it by absorbing it through the walls of the arteries. And if you've got too much of this stuff, then this plaque is going to build up in your arteries. So that's roughly why it happens. Then we've got to talk about the diet, I guess. Keto. My history with keto. So I've struggled with my weight forever really. And I've been on very, very low fat diets before, and those standard sort of diet, the only way it works for me is if I'm on a starvation diet, effectively. I'm eating very, very, very small numbers of calories. The problem with that is not only do you lose weight, but you also lose all your muscle mass, and the minute you ease off and eat anything at all, you just put it all back on again. The turning point came for me in my 30s, where I discovered the Atkins diet, which says cut all the sugar and starch out of your diet. So have meat and veg and dairy in moderation. Don't, avoid fruits, avoid potatoes, rice, pasta, all the starchy things. And I did that, and I lost a lot of weight, and I kept it off for about 5 years until, stuff happens in your life, and I stopped doing it. And the minute I stopped doing it, I put on a huge amount of weight. And if I'm not on this diet, I can weigh 120 kilos and be really quite unwell. So in my 40s, I reached a point where my health was getting really quite bad. And so I went on. I thought, right, I'm going to have to go back on the diet. So I went this time, rather than Atkins, I do what they now call keto. And that is, which has a slight more of an emphasis on eating fat for fuel. Whereas I guess Atkins is slightly more protein for fuel. The nice thing about that is that anything you would like to eat, you can make. So I can have a trifle, I can make a pie, I can make a pizza. All these sorts of foods that are in the Western diet, I can make. But you make them by swapping out, flour for nuts and using things like cheese. You're making pastry with mozzarella cheese, for instance. So I did that, and again, I lost a lot of weight. My cholesterol profile improved, my HbA1c numbers improved dramatically. I was approaching type 2 diabetes and went, completely reversed that by doing keto. So that's my history of it. Then let's talk now about why that diet worked. Why does a low-carb diet work? So your body can use either sugar or fat as fuel. And on a Western diet, though, it gets pretty used to using sugar for fuel, doesn't it? Because sugar's in absolutely everything. And you go, oh, I don't eat sugar, I just eat baked potatoes. Well, I'm sorry, if you eat a baked potato, 2 or 3 hours later, your stomach's just got effectively 3 or 4 tablespoons full of sugar in it, as if you'd eaten sugar. It's just it takes longer for it to break down. So by removing those things from your diet and focusing on, meat and veg, and removing all the processed food as well is a great help. Your body is forced to burn fat for fuel. So if you imagine, basically what's happening is you're on a sugar roller coaster up to that point. So you get up in the morning and you go, I'm going to be good today. And then you eat your breakfasts and your blood sugar goes up. So your body goes, crikey, got to do something about this. So it releases loads of insulin and your insulin level goes up. And the effect of increasing insulin is it turns off your ability to burn fat and says, right, let's get rid of the sugar in your blood, which it does. However, the problem is that we tend to become insulin resistant. And if you're insulin resistant, then what happens is you produce way too much insulin. And you end up on this roller coaster. So you produce too much insulin. A couple of hours later, you are weak, shaky. You desperately need to eat because your blood sugar has come down, but your insulin level is still high. And so your ability to burn fat is still turned off. So you eat again, and then you produce an even bigger insulin spike. And then, and it goes on and on. And so you start the day feeling okay. You end the day with your head in a bucket full of chocolate. If this is you, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, this doesn't happen to everybody, of course. You've got some people, they don't get the insulin resistance. They don't eat too much food, and that it just and if they want to lose weight, they just cut down a little bit. I wish I was one of them, but I'm not. So that's why it works. You've got to cut that out. Your insulin level's nice and stable, so then you are able to burn fat and your appetite decreases. It's not a battle of willpowers anymore. But then you discover you've got heart disease and you're eating all this fat in your diet. Well, the first thing is you don't want to be eating loads of saturated fat anymore, because it's like throwing petrol on the fire. There's enough of this cholesterol stuck in the walls of my arteries already. I don't want to add any more. I want my body to slowly be able to improve that plaque, if possible, by not adding more to it. So I need to reduce the amount of saturated fat in my diet. I need to eat anti-inflammatory foods so that it's not, the LDL cholesterol is not getting damaged. And then and keep that saturated fat level at a sensible level. So the NHS recommend that a man doesn't have more than 30 grams of saturated fat per day, and a lady 20 grams of saturated fat per day. Now, if you add up how much saturated fat in you don't realise till you start adding it up how much we really do eat, particularly in processed food. If you pick up a piece of cheese, for instance, look at the back of that. Look at how much saturated fat there is in that. The amount I can eat now is vanishingly small. Not to say nothing's banned, but I'm trying to make sure, certainly, that I don't exceed 30 grams of saturated fat a day, and that I ideally less than that. We'll get to that. Now then, so what diets do they recommend? Actually, I've just seen the cardiologist and he's on a low-carb diet. So I'm obviously not daft with the low-carb diet thing, but if you go and look at the British Heart Foundation or what have you, they are telling you to get about 30% of your calories from carbohydrates. They're telling you to avoid sugar because that's inflammatory. They're telling you to avoid red meat, to reduce the amount of meat you eat in total, basically, and to reduce dairy, and to eat whole grains for satiety, and to focus on eating beans and pulses and lots of vegetables and olive oil. So I read this and I think, oh crikey, I'm going to have to make some real changes to my diet. So first off, I tried doing keto, following those guidelines strictly, the meat being the biggest problem. So living on, I can tell you, I lasted about a week, living on chicken, skinless chicken with vegetables and a bit of olive oil. That's too strict. You can't live like that for the rest of your life. So then I thought, right, well, let's just do what they're telling me to do exactly what they're telling me to do. So I started with a DASH diet. Now, a DASH diet focuses on eating lots and lots of vegetables with beans and pulses, so lots of soup. So I did that, and I could eat that okay. However, I was obviously eating too much of it. My hunger returned and I was being driven to eat. So even though it's high quality food, I'm eating too much of it. My body is driving me to eat too much of it. So I'm gaining weight. So after a while, I didn't just do these things for a few days or a few weeks. I gave them, a considerable period of trying all of these options and different ways of doing them. So I did that. And then I moved on to a low GI diet. So they're telling me to eat whole grains for satiety. So have porridge, have sugar-free muesli, have low GI bread, have brown rice, And so I did, trying to control the portions. It doesn't work. You eat, it's driving that sugar spike. It's making me hungry. And you eat too much of it. And also it can lead you to just end up being so hungry that you'll just eat anything. And you eat the wrong foods, which is completely the wrong thing. I tried mixing those two diets together in several different ways. I tried intermittent fasting mixed in with it as well. I tried adding in apple cider vinegar for satiety. I'm telling you all these things because that's what's good. People are then going to write in the comments, oh, you ought to do the pomegranate diet or whatever. I'm just demonstrating that I've done what they told me to do, and it doesn't work. I tried a completely vegetarian diet. I could live on it. It was fine. But I was gaining weight. And the crunch point came in about September. I took a photograph of myself in comparison to what I was like a year before on a low carbohydrate diet. And it was really quite shocking. I'm not going to show you it here because, you might vomit, frankly. But if Patreon really wants to know, I'll do a little short video of them of my journey so far with a big caution sticker at the front of it. But, sometimes you need a picture like that to drive you to say no more. A line in the sand. I don't care what these people are saying I ought to be doing. That doesn't work. So I need to do something that I know will work. And so I changed my diet. And we're doing a diet which is, well, it's not keto. It's a low carb diet with intermittent fasting in it as well. And so I'm going to just call it the Simon diet. So what is the Simon diet? Well, the Simon diet is all about appetite control. I think it's the biggest con going, isn't it? This idea that it's all about willpower, and it's not. If you can't burn fat for fuel, if you feel weak and shaky, if you don't have these things, I agree. You do need. You can go, no, I'm not going to eat that chocolate bar. But if you're there feeling really ill and so that you've got to eat, it's not. So it's absolutely critical that the diet means that I'm not hungry, that I eat for fuel, not because I feel weak and I'm driven to eat. The other part of it is that it's got no sugar or starch in it, or very, very, very low levels of sugar and starch in it. The only sugar really I have is from lactose in milk, I guess, in that I've got to have some dairy. So I have skimmed milk in my tea and in my shake. And so there is some lactose in that, but I'm not really having a problem with that. Then the other part of the diet is that it has a mix of calorie days in it. So I have both low, mid, and high calorie days. Why? Well, on a low calorie day, you get to the point where you're not eating very many calories in a day, but hopefully the rest of the calories you need for the day are being met by, your body's using its own fat. And then there are other days where I eat probably almost enough calories for my requirement for the day, so I'm not going to be burning as much fat that day. And then I have other days where I, have a Billy Bunter meal. Once a week, I have a refeed day where I, you know, I don't know how many calories I eat, probably 2,500 calories on a day like that. As much as I need, basically, because I don't want my metabolism to slow down. So, where do we start with the diet? The diet starts with phase one, which is healing, which isn't so much about losing weight. It's more about getting getting off that sugar roller coaster, removing the sugar and starch from your diet. And so I have 3 meals a day, but they're based around vegetables and sources of protein primarily. So, breakfast, stir-fried vegetables. I get there's a frozen stir-fry mix I like. I get it from Lidl. Half a pack of that. Stir-fry it in some olive oil, and I use olive oil as my primary source of fat. And stir-fry that, and then I'll crack in a couple of eggs and just, scramble them in. So that's breakfast, along with tea. Yeah, I find a large cup of tea in the morning fills your stomach. So tea, I will have a large cup of tea with skimmed milk and some erythritol for sweetness. That's breakfast. Then lunch. I'm using whey protein. And this is a cornerstone pillar of the diet, really. I've discovered the bulk whey proteins have come on such a long way since the last time I used them when I was in my 20s. They are low in fat, pretty low in carbs, really, and lots of protein. So they're sweetened. It's sweetened with what is it sweetened with? Here's what it's sweetened with. They're available in lots of different flavours, and so I like the banana one. I like the chocolate one. I like the chocolate malted honeycomb one. That was very nice. You can have mint choc, orange choc. You can have Black Forest Gatto. The list goes on and on. There's lots and lots of different flavours. So I can have that as my lunch, a shake, which is typically 2 scoops of the whey protein, 300 mils of water, 300 mils of skimmed milk. Shake it up, have that, and then I'll have a 30-gram pot of nuts. So that might be salted nuts. So it might be dry roasted peanuts, for instance. And I have that after. So you have the protein shake which fills your stomach, and then while the appetite's still there, you eat the nuts one at a time until the appetite's gone. So that's lunch. And then for tea, meat and veg. So cabbage is a great one. Pork, medallions. I'm eating meat of all types, red meat as well. Whether or not that's made a cardiologist's head explode, I'm eating red meat as well, but I'm picking, beef, for instance, 5%. And lamb, I can get less than 5% lamb if you buy the leanest cuts. Pork, medallions, less than 2%. So the meat doesn't have to be high in fat, but it's a good source of protein. And then with that, I'm eating veg, and I don't count carbohydrates in vegetables, certainly not starchy vegetables. So I avoid starchy vegetables like potatoes, for instance, sweet potatoes. I'm eating spinach, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, salad, all those sort of things, which, although they do have some carbohydrate in them, it's slower to release. and it just doesn't seem to drive the sort of sugar spike that's a problem. So that's lunch. That's tea, sorry. How does that break down calorie-wise?
So in phase 1, breakfast is about 400 calories-ish, with most of it coming from veg. So that gives us 17 grams-ish of carbohydrate, about 26 grams of protein coming from the eggs, and 7.5 grams of saturated fat, again mostly coming from the eggs. So for lunch I fill up on that protein shake, so lunch is about 500 calories-ish, with 23 grams of carbs, 61 grams of protein, which really fills you up, and 29 grams of fat, with 5.5 coming from saturates. So the fat is coming predominantly from the nuts and the protein from the whey protein and the carbohydrates from the skimmed milk. At tea time I have another meal of about 500 calories. So in this case, 23 grams of carbohydrates, which is all coming from the cabbage. There's 52 grams of protein coming from those pork medallions and 13 grams-ish of fat with 5.5 grams of saturate, and that's coming from the meat. So adding up a typical day for phase 1, we're looking at about 1,500 calories, so a small calorie deficit with 60-ish grams of carbohydrate, mostly coming from veg. There's 140 grams of protein coming from meat and whey protein and egg, and 71 grams of fat, but there's only 16.5 grams total for the whole day of saturated fat, which is what we care about.
So that's phase 1. And the point of phase 1 is not really to lose weight, it's just to get rid of the appetite. I only needed to do phase 1 for about a week, and then the appetite was gone. If I'd not done a low-carb diet before, I suspect it would take longer. I'd probably be in that phase for a month or a couple of months before, as your body adapts to and becomes more able to burn fat for fuel. So what did I do next? Well, then we get into the diet proper at the point where I can really start to lose some weight. And I've been doing this diet now for about 3 months. I don't know. I'm not weighing myself quite deliberately because I don't want to get tied up with the weight, but I've lost at least 10 kilos. At least 10 kilos, I say. I'll let Patreon decide from the pictures because I've not weighed myself. So, basically, the main part of the weight loss diet involves first removing breakfast. I haven't had breakfast for at least 2 months. Okay, and the reason for that is whatever you eat, you're going to drive some sort of insulin spike. So let's remove one of those spikes out of your day. So there's only 2. So in the morning, after I'd been doing phase 1 for a week, I woke up in the morning and go, I've had this large cup of tea. I'm fine. I don't need anything to eat today. Yeah. So I didn't. I went through to lunchtime and then carried on as normal. So had the shake for lunch with the nuts and then an evening meal. Then after I've been doing that for a week or 2, I then took it further and brought fasting into it. So in that I have these sort of low, mid and high calorie days. So I will have either 1 or 2 days in a row where all I have that big cup of tea in the morning. At lunchtime, I'll have that milkshake with the nuts, and that's it. That's all I have for a day. So that day's probably only 700 calories, probably.
So in phase 2, the low-calorie day is really quite low calorie, only about 600 calories-ish, with the carbs being around 20 grams of carbohydrate and the fats, the saturated fats for the day only being about 5.5 grams-ish of saturated fat, which puts me deep into ketosis. And I'll do this for 2 days, 1 or 2 days in a row, which really drives weight loss.
So I'll have 2 days where I just have the protein shake. That's a very low calorie day. Never have more than 2 days in a row. Then I'll have a day when I have 2 meals, or it might be my refeed day. So I have more calories, have that evening meal once, and then I'll repeat the cycle. Try not to have any fixed pattern to it, really. 1 day of just the shake, 2 days of shake. Then 2 meal day. One of the days in the week is a refeed day. Well, I'll have 3 meals, or it may well be that I have I'll have a proper feed. So it might be I do a roast dinner. It might be get a nice piece of loin pork. It's very lean, very little fat in it, and I'll have that with cabbage and a bit of gravy. Lots of veg.
So on a higher calorie day, we have a cup of tea for breakfast, the protein shake and nuts for lunch, and then an evening meal of meat and veg, which typically is a sort of 1,100, 1,200 calorie sort of day, with 40 or 50 grams of carbohydrate and 110, 120 grams of protein, something like that, with about 40 grams of fat, typically with 9 or 10 coming from saturates. There are days, of course, where I have more than that, where I have once a week, have a deliberate refeed day, where I'll eat considerably more than that. There are also days where my appetite is completely gone, and when that happens, I give myself something that's going to stimulate my appetite. I find Greek yogurt with some protein shake powder mixed into it really gets your appetite going, and then you can actually eat a proper meal.
So that's what I do. What else am I allowing myself? I will allow myself. The thing with this diet is I've got to do it for the rest of my life. So whatever I'm do, it has got to be sustainable. It's not something I'm going to do for a bit and then stop doing, because the minute I stop doing it, I would be massively fat again. So you've got to have some things in there that make it livable. So I will allow myself. I have perhaps 6 bottles of alcohol-free beer a week, which again has got bottled beer has got 77 calories, 17 grams of carbohydrates in it, but it just makes life more bearable. So I've been dry now, haven't had a drink for 560 days or something. But an alcohol-free beer just hits the spot, really. So other things I'll do occasionally. So if I get ill, I stop. I will just eat whatever. I will eat a normal diet because your body needs it if you're ill. Then there's the special occasion, and this is not like, oh, it's a special occasion, it's a Tuesday. So Christmas, for instance, I'm going to have 48 hours off my diet. I wouldn't want to be off it for much longer than that, because the appetite would return if I have much more than that. But, rather than replacing things in my diet with things which have got lots of fat in, as I would have done before, now I will just say, let's just have Christmas Day with everybody else. So, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, coming full circle, I've got a time machine. I'm going back to talk to younger me. What am I going to tell myself? Well, I'm going to tell myself I'm going to tell myself to go on a low carbohydrate earlier than I did. If I'd have gone on a low carbohydrate diet when I was in my early 20s, I'd probably be far less insulin resistant than I am now. But I would tell myself to count saturated fat. basically. That's the long and short of it. I would tell myself to stop drinking. Younger me probably wouldn't have listened, but I would have told myself to stop drinking. I told myself to go and get diagnosed for sleep apnea because that has caused high blood pressure, which is probably the primary cause of my problem, actually. But I'd have got that diagnosed a lot earlier, and then I'd have had my blood pressure checked regularly, and I'd have kept badgering the doctor until they'd actually medically treated me. Because with my other problems, with my congenital heart defect, having my blood pressure under control is probably the biggest thing that's going to, change you for the long period of time. That's the thing that's going to add the most to my life, time to my life, I would guess. Yeah, so I'm on a low-carb diet. And for those people who think that's some sort of satanic thing, sorry, that's just the long and short of it. But it's not really keto anymore. Someone who's on keto will look at that and look at me eating 60 or even 70 grams of carbohydrate a day and go, well, that's far, far too much. But if you are not eating fat the way I'm not eating fat the way you are, I'm eating a lot less, and then I'm eating mostly protein. Protein is the thing. Protein from the whey, protein from the whey protein, protein from eggs, protein from meat, and I'm eating as little fat as I can. Really, the fat I'm eating is olive oil and nuts, primarily. So that's it. Is anyone still there? Hello. Thank you for sitting through all this. Right, on with my day. I've got more videos to create. Take care. See you all later.